faces in near darkness, in a place where light barely feels cautious enough to tread. We must speak about what will probably go down as one of the best collaborations and most anticipated collaborations of 2014, if not the best and most anticipated. In a different setting, a different hue, in a different way, we are here to talk about Terrestrials, an apt-titled album by its observers, Ulver and Sunn. This is not a new collaboration. This is one that has happened before. However, this was one that was granted 3 whole tracks. It was granted essentially its own album. 35 minutes plus in length. And prior to this album's release, prior to it coming to be, prior to its inevitable leak, out of curiosity and out of anticipation, by the patient but very hungry followers of each of these groups, many individuals within these tribes, within these sects, no doubt had, alongside of their anticipation, a hearty amount of questioning or fear, wondering what this was going to be, wondering what it would sound like. Which side of Ulver would we get in this collaboration? The one of mass cinematic scope? The one of haunting beauty? Or would it be a full reversion all the way back to the earliest stages of their career, where you hear something that resembles somewhat Viking or black metal? Would Sunn continue forward on the ground that they had already tread? Would they continue forward with their drone mastery, or would they step outside the circle a little bit, as they had with the collaboration with Boris, entitled Alter, which in a coverkillernation-less world was the collaboration of the year during its release year? Those answers quickly are given to us with the very first track, Let There Be Light. Let There Be Light is a song that, for the very first half of it, you immediately understand which direction Ulver would be taking their side of this collaboration. It's the more electronic side, the more cinematic side, the one that's able to present large soundscape, not to mention also something that feels as though it could easily be the soundtrack to either a suspense horror film, a horror film in general, or just a weird David Lynch-like strange tone. Something that's able to build upon itself, something that's able to escalate mood, but do so at a slow churn as opposed to all at once. This is not one that imposes with sudden motion and sudden sound, but instead one that is able to draw a mood through careful development and through careful planning. Sunn joins the fray, and really this is a track that really begins to get its legs, that really begins to get going, that begins to haunt, that begins to send cerebral chills down spines about halfway through. And as the second half of this epic opener is able to go forward, more and more are you feeling those emotions of guilt, perhaps of fear, but more often than not, that which you feel is desolation. The second track, Western Horn, is able to really emanate these feelings once more, able to magnify them, able to add a little bit of a dirty or dusky overtone to it. In spite of picturesque beauty, in spite of sounds that no doubt will lead to more than just feelings of fear, that will sometimes, in some moments, add to feelings of hope. The overall feel is that of a desolation, a beautiful desolation, almost as though being the sole survivor, but not completely being out of the fray. The fleeting moments of humanity perhaps still being tugged at. The combined efforts of these two bands through Ulver's electronic prowess and the doom stylings, the deep, dark, resonating sounds that Sunn deliver, is really what makes this a whole experience. It's really what makes this whole entire album really feel as though it has all of the layerings necessary, regardless of the fact that you don't hear any lyrics throughout these first 2 tracks. This is something where the sounds themselves, the instrumental that has been painted around your visual, the visual that you've crafted within your own imagination, is all that's really necessary in order to invoke these emotions. Not to mention, it's all that's really necessary in order to tell the story of these songs. The story, of course, is whatever you imagine it to be. But I can guarantee you that the story that you are able to tell within your imagination will be a dark one. We exit the realm with Eternal Return. Eternal Return, whenever you think of the words themselves, can mean any number of things. It can mean death. Death is the first thing that is really thought of whenever those 2 words hit. It can mean the eternal return after battle. It could mean the eternal return after a struggle. Or it could mean the return to the earth. The natural cycle of life. If you want to go literally with Terrestrials as a whole, perhaps a return home. A return to the place that they have come from, with no intent to return to where they have gone. This song has probably one of the most haunting and beautiful introductions, the first 4 to 6 minutes of this track, that I have heard in a long period of time. This is a 14-minute plus long song, so whenever I say 4 to 6 minutes as an introduction, you must understand what I mean. This is one of those songs that has a grandiose amount of memory to it. The beautiful charm that is able to be effortlessly combined from Sunn and Ulver throughout these moments is absolutely haunting. But then, as the track continues onward, you hear a familiar voice. You hear lyricism for the very first time. You hear Garm. That very familiar, soft, hushed tone that you've heard on Ulver. Through classics, through combinations. It's one that haunts. It's one that chills. It's one that delivers a solemn message, but does so without the need for unnecessary fanfare. We then return, very silently, to the darkness. We return there just as we began there, principally because, as this album ends, almost as suddenly as it began, we must sit back and we must give this a score. We must give this some sort of value, even though the value alone of such a collaboration should be enough for us. This album is strong. 3 tracks in 35 minutes may not seem very long. It may not seem as though we have a very large sample size. But each of these 3 tracks delivers. They're epic in scope, and none of the time feels wasted. At least not to somebody who is well appreciative and well versed in the forms of music that are going into this. Those who are expecting 3-minute songs and enjoy songs that are that quick, that have a lot of aggression, that have a lot of untamed rage, will not enjoy this, principally because it is a completely different animal. It's something that's instead able to evoke emotions of fear. It's instead able to evoke emotions of beauty. It's instead able to make everything around you feel a little bit stranger, and you move through it with a certain sense of trepidation. 91 out of 100. That is all that needs to be said. The observation concluded. We return to the darkness from which we started. Do we return, never to return? Is this an eternal return? Or will we once again venture back into the light? What is your favorite song from Terrestrials? What is your favorite project from these bands, Sunn and Ulver? I beckon you to tell me this, and tell the world what your favorite moments from these terrestrials would happen to be in the comments below.